Hello, and welcome to the Raven View on the news. My name is Adam Ericksen,
I'm Suzanne Ross.
and the Raven View offers something that you won't see on mainstream news outlets,
Right.
and that is the attempt at finding scapegoats within our culture and also looking for triangular desire. This is the mechanism of human nature, and we are going to try to expose it with you. So, Suzanne, our first topic on November 30th, 2010, is the attempted bombing in Portland, Oregon, my hometown of
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon. This is really affects me. So, what happened last Friday at the tree ceremony in Portland, Oregon for Christmas was Mohammed Osman Mohammed tried to bomb the tree lighting ceremony where many people were going to be attending.
Right.
And the FBI was involved for about 6 to 9 months or something like that, a long time. And Suzanne, what are your initial thoughts about this situation?
Yeah, the FBI had been actively involved with Mohammed.
Mhm.
We can call him Mohammed.
Yes.
And the thing that has captured my attention is a discussion I saw in the paper in the New York Times today about the questions of entrapment. Because of the way in which the FBI uncovers these terrorist plots, they do so, they're trying to catch them at the inception before anything bad happens, which is, of course, what we want. We don't want an after the fact discovery. I think everyone is in agreement that we'd like to find out these plots and stop them before they actually have a chance of succeeding.
Yes. Now, entrapment, as some of our viewers may not understand the word, is the idea that sometimes local law enforcement might get somebody to commit a terrorist attack, for example, without that person initially wanting to do such a thing.
Yes, well, and that's the issue. What I thought was well explained in the New York Times article was the legal definition of entrapment. But what the FBI are allowed to do is to participate or facilitate something that would already have happened if they weren't involved. So it's objectionable only if the government agents lead a political or religious group into criminal activity that otherwise would not have occurred.
Yes.
And so that's the big question for us when we talk about human relationships, because they are mimetic. As we know, as psychology is beginning to understand, human beings don't exist in isolation.
Right.
We exist in networks, and in fact, our identity and our desires are held in being by those networks and are constructed by them and changed by them.
So you would say that the FBI agents involved in this case had some kind of mimetic relationship with Mohammed?
Well, that's the question I
Yeah.
think that is not being asked. And that I think must be asked if we're to really understand whether or not this activity would have occurred without the involvement of the FBI, because how we actually act on our impulses and where our impulses come from and where our desires come from, it comes from others, right? And one thing that struck me in here was that the law enforcement officials said that they gave this young man, Mohammed, every opportunity to choose a nonviolent way to act on his frustrations, and he refused to choose the nonviolent alternatives. He kept coming back to the violent one, and that's their proof, therefore, that his intentions were violent and he would have carried them out regardless of FBI involvement. My question is, in what way did that FBI agent telegraph the outcome he was looking for? Because as we were talking about earlier, you you find what you're looking for.
Well,
right?
here's the quote from the Attorney General Eric Holder on his comments on the situation. Holder says this: he called the sting operation in which Mr. Mohammed was under the scrutiny of federal agents for nearly 6 months part of a forward-leaning way in which the Justice Department, the FBI, our law enforcement partners at the state and local level are trying to find people who are bound and determined to harm Americans and American interests around the world. So there's this assumption that there are certain people out to cause terrorist activities, which we would say that there are.
There probably are, yeah.
The issue is, are we, in going out and searching for them to make us safe, are we creating the very thing that we're trying to keep us safe from?
Yeah, and that possibility is not part of the mainstream conversation, because the normal way we think about humans doesn't allow for that to happen. We think, you know, this young man Muhammad has his desires, and he's going to act on them independently of who's in his environment. And what we're trying to suggest here is that that law enforcement official, we don't know in what way he projected authority,
right,
or hinted at what he hoped Muhammad would choose.
Yeah.
I had a recent experience, it's trivial, but it illustrates this dynamic. I was on my way to a conference in San Francisco that I couldn't wait to go to because the speakers were fabulous. I couldn't wait to get there. And the security TSA agent is looking at my ticket and my ID and goes, oh, let me guess, you're on your way to Hawaii. And I said, I wish.
Yeah.
And I walked away and I thought, I don't wish I was going to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Why did I say that?
Yeah.
But I mirrored back to him his desire to go to Hawaii.
Now here's a larger context in all of this. Here is one of the narratives that's going around in American culture that is really troublesome. And that is that this specific group, Muslims, are out to get us.
Yes.
And here is a specific example of a Muslim who is out to get us. And the narrative that's going around is that this guy represents what Islam is. And you don't hear in mainstream media the imam who's behind all of this, who's actually working with the FBI and trying to solve this case. On the other hand, there are Muslims within at the mosque where Muhammad was who are questioning this, who are questioning the tactics of the FBI. And now, those of us on the outside can say, see, they're questioning this. They really are terrorists, but all they're trying to do is get at justice.
Right.
Right?
Oh, exactly. I think that's a very important point, because the FBI was actively working with the officials at the mosque who share the goal of preventing terrorist activity, especially by someone in their congregation. That's the last thing they want to happen.
Right.
They're trying to integrate into American society and be seen for what they are, peace-loving citizens like everyone else. So this doesn't help their goal,
right,
at all. So and I think the other point that's really important to make here is that, again, we're not disputing that there are threats and there are people who are hell-bent on doing bad things. But our concern at Raven is that in our zeal, in our search to uncover these problems, problem people, we're not creating other problems that wouldn't have existed otherwise, and that are therefore distracting us from where the real problems are. I think there may come a point where we have to have a real honest discussion about how safe can we really make ourselves, because this quest for absolute safety is, I think, part of what's getting us into trouble.
Well, the quest for absolute safety, it's a great question, but also the methods that will actually make us safe. So often, violence is very imitative. And you see this happening within this specific story where this guy plans to bomb the ceremony and somebody goes and sets fire to his mosque. So violence in this situation is just imitating itself, and who's going to win is the question that many people ask when they're caught in these relationships. The question shouldn't be who's going to win, but the question should be more how are we going to change the situation away from violence and towards compassionate communities.
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, I think to myself, if I was the parent of Muhammad, if I was his mother, and the FBI had, intercepted his email messages or something, and then had gone on to lead him down the road of that, I would have taken that agent by the collar and said, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell his imam? Why didn't you tell someone?"
But the problem is that we're not thinking that way.
No.
We're thinking he would have done this anyway.
Anyway.
So the FBI may have led him to do something that he would have done anyway, but you have no proof that he would have done this anyway.
Yes, and so those are the questions I think that we need to be asking as we're looking at these stories. We need to say, what was the relationship between the FBI agent and that young man that was contributing to him acting out these on his intentions?
So those are our questions and our reflections, and we'd love to hear yours. Thanks.
Thank you.